President Biden addressed the nation, announcing new sanctions to punish Russia. Russian troops at this hour have reportedly taken full control of the area around the Chernobyl nuclear power station, including the plant itself, and are inching closer to Kyiv. Joining us with the latest on the ground, ABC senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell. He is in Kyiv. ABC's Phil Lipoff is in Poland. Washington correspondent for the White House, Mary Alice Parks, is here in our nation's capital. Ian, let's start with you. What can you tell us about the significance of Chernobyl and the concerns for Kyiv at this point?
Yeah, I mean, one has to assume it's the strategic value in terms of where it places potentially Russian forces as a bridgehead for a potential attack on the capital, Kiev. It's about 65 miles north of here. Now, of course, everyone knows the site. It's where this nuclear disaster took place in the 1980s, and the site has been a protected, almost no-go exclusion zone pretty much ever since. Now, there was a battle that took place there today. We have no reason to believe that the infrastructure of Chernobyl power plant itself was compromised in any way. As you say, Russian forces are in control of that particular area, but it looks like a concerted effort to try and, in some senses, begin to encircle the capital, Kiev, as well. And if you look at the targets that have been identified today, they're primarily military, designed to try and decapitate the military, its ability to conduct command and control, but also the government as well. Russian forces also just 20 miles out of the city as well. They've taken over the Antonov air base. There have been fierce battles being fought there. At one point, the Ukrainian forces seem to have taken it back, but tonight it looks like Russian special forces are back in control of that area. There were plenty of people who filmed their helicopters coming in and landing, and as I say, there have been pitched battles. Again, that looks like an attempt to try and move close in on the capital. It's just gone 10 p.m. here, which means the curfew has come into place, and the city is deathly quiet. I mean, you really can hear a pin drop out there. There are no cars out on the road. Many of the lights have been turned off. There's a kind of dense fog that's set in, adding to this kind of eerie sense of expectation and dread that is now setting in for the citizens of this capital.
So, Ian, quiet there tonight. But as you have talked with and seen Ukrainians defend themselves to this point, is there a sense of panic and devastation? Even though it's quiet tonight, we have seen the pictures of Ukrainians now in the metro stations. They've been turned into bomb shelters. Give us a sense for how they are feeling when they're trying to wake up and live a normal life amid this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, nobody can imagine what it would be like to be in that situation. We all go to bed with some sense of, I don't know whether you heard that, that was the sound of another explosion out in the distance. We're hearing them every few minutes or so. You know, we all go to bed with the expectation that tomorrow is going to look like today. You have that guarantee, if you like. That's what living in developed societies in a situation of security gives you. Well, the Ukrainians have just suddenly lost that. The curtain has fallen away, and they're trying to be stoic, they're trying to be strong, they're trying to be unified. But of course, when push comes to shove and people's backs are against the wall, you have to make some difficult decisions. So we saw thousands of people take to the roads to head west towards the Polish border. We're hearing stories of lots of people trying to flee the east towards the capital, Kiev, and again head further west. But for those people left behind, which is the vast majority, they're having to now live with this new reality of being in a state of war. And what that means is that the metro stations that you normally take to work or to go shopping is now your place of shelter. That the ATM stores saw queues outside, the ATM points saw queues outside today with people trying to get some money out, but most banks, most businesses were closed. A few supermarkets that were open again saw people trying to stock up on supplies to try and hunker down. The streets were very, very quiet today. I mean, this is the capital of Europe's largest country. It's normally bustling. There's normally gridlock out on the roads. Today, nothing of it. And as I say, by now, most of the lights around here have gone out. I know you can see the cathedral behind me. Normally that's lit up. Their lights have gone out, and it is very, very quiet. And I think there is a sense that people know what's going on. That's the only sound that we're hearing is the bell tolling at the church behind me, and people are aware of where Russian forces are, and they're asking each other, do you think they're going to come to town? Nobody expected this. Nobody imagined that the worst would come to pass. And right now, they're facing it, and they know potentially within a matter of hours or days, Russian forces could well be inside their city.
Well, I think you just laid out exactly what we're watching, Ian. You know, from a distance, you hear explosions at the same time, bells from the church. I mean, what a prophetic thing to witness with you late into the night there. Mary Alice, back here in the United States, the president announcing more sanctions against Russia. We heard from him in the past hour. Let's take a listen to a bit of that.
Between our actions and those of our allies and partners, we estimate that we'll cut off more than half of Russia's high-tech imports. It'll strike a blow to their ability to continue to modernize their military. It'll degrade their aerospace industry, including their space program. It'll hurt their ability to build ships, reducing their ability to compete economically. And it will be a major hit to Putin's long-term strategic ambitions.
And Mary Alice, in that same room, correspondents asked the president why Putin wasn't singled out. Why wasn't Biden going to sanction Putin as an individual? He said he was not prepared to answer that. Why not?
Yeah, he said it was still on the table, but he faced repeated questions about that. I think that would have been a big political move for President Biden. I don't know if it's something that they're just hoping they still have in their back pocket as a deterrent, but they're going to continue to face questions as to why they're not going after Putin individually. You know, we did hear President Biden say that they thought the sanctions they were rolling out would cost Russia dearly, both economically and strategically, that the cost would be felt both immediate and over time. They are rolling out these new sanctions against 4 major Russian banks, several Russian individuals. They said that every asset that they have in America will be frozen, but still so many reporters there in the room skeptical about whether it will possibly be enough to change anything we're seeing on the ground and how long it might take before Russia feels the effects of any of this.
And Phil, let's head over to you in Poland, where Ukrainians are feeling the effects. They have crossed over the border there. What are they telling you? Do they hope to return? Do you think that you will see even more Ukrainians through the night moving into Poland?
We'll first take that part of the question, Kira. Absolutely. We know right now there is a massive line. You heard Ian in Kyiv talking about the Ukrainians moving west toward the Polish border. We're an hour from that border. Our colleague Matt Gutman was at one of the crossings south of where I am toward the border, and he spoke to a woman who was in line for 11 hours. This was hours ago. She spent 11 hours in line to get into Poland. Think about how many other cars, how many other families are there. And that line is only going to get longer. And eventually it won't be a line. It will be a mass of people, of Ukrainians, trying desperately to get into this country. Poland has been bracing for this for quite some time now. That's why the United States sent thousands of troops here to help manage the border. The second part of your question, Kira, is are they going to go back? And the feeling here is absolutely, it's their homeland. Nobody wanted to leave at all. For instance, I spoke to one young couple today who came here last night to Lublin, Poland, which is a short distance from the border. People travel back and forth all the time. And they came here last night to sleep because they were concerned there might be an attack. And while they were sleeping here in Poland, there was an attack, and the Russians came in. They're from Lviv. And we know from Martha's reporting what's happening with the Russian troops around Lviv. And so they woke up this morning thinking they were going to go back across the border that way east into Ukraine. And there is no way they were doing that today. They have a 1-year-old child, safety first and foremost for them and their child. But they have parents in Lviv, and they're concerned about them. But they were determined. It's a sad reality of what we're seeing here, Kira, but they were determined to get back into their homeland. They just said, we don't know if it's going to be day, weeks, months, or whatever.
Phil, Mary Alice, James, and Ian, thanks to all of you so much. So what is Russia's endgame? How far will President Putin go? Joining me now, Michael Kaufman, director of the Russia Studies Program at the Center for New America. Good to have you with us. First, your reaction to this multi-pronged Russian assault that we have seen unfold. Are you surprised at the targets and Putin's initial tactics here? This is your specialty.
What we're seeing is a campaign with maximalist war aims. I mean, Vladimir Putin's goal is clearly not some strategic raid or some limited gains. You know, I think they are going to attempt to encircle the capital, Kiev. I think they're going to attempt to impose regime change. And they're advancing along multiple sort of prongs or axes into Ukraine with ground forces from the north, from the east, with a substantial breakout to the south from Crimea. They're going to attempt to encircle a large body of Ukrainian forces in the eastern part of the country. So this is a fight, maybe not for all of Ukraine, but for large parts of it, and it is a full-scale invasion.
So, Michael, you actually predicted that the Kremlin is after a regime change, that anything else just wouldn't make sense militarily. Why?
Well, it's very clear that Russian policy in previous offensives that they've attempted, 2014, 2015, has failed. Those were battles that they had won, but they hadn't achieved Russian political aims. At the end of the day, this invasion is taking place because of a long-term failure of Russian policy in Ukraine. Russia's attempt to impose its will on the country to have a say over Ukraine's strategic orientation and domestic policies. A repeat of the kind of campaign that the Russian military ran in 14 and 15 would simply be doubling or tripling down on something that Moscow has widely acknowledged has failed. That's why they're now pursuing this completely drastic and reckless course of action. And I think that they're now pursuing a sort of what they feel is a much more final political solution to try to install a pro-Russian government in Kiev.
Do you think the sanctions that have been put in place thus far by the president and other global leaders will have any impact on Putin's thinking?
I mean, I'm sure they will. They're going to seriously hurt the Russian economy, and they're going to seriously hurt Russia's ability to be strategically competitive in the near term and medium term and probably long term. When it comes to Ukraine, it's clear that he's committed to this course of action, and I don't think much is going to change his mind at this point.
So you have also written that this does nothing to satisfy Putin's grievances against Kyiv or his demands for security guarantees from NATO. So how does this war get Putin what he wants?
So what I was writing about is that Putin had framed this conflict as being about the Donbass, but of course it wasn't, right? And it had very little to do with these occupied territories that Russia-led forces were controlling there at the time. That was simply a pretext and a sort of first stage as part of a justification he was advancing for what was clearly a war of choice that Russia was going to conduct. In fact, this has probably been one of the longest telegraphed military crises that we can find in recent history. For months, military analysts and members of the administration and intelligence community had warned that a Russian invasion was very likely, that they were building up to it. And there wasn't a lot of evidence that the diplomatic approach, the diplomatic side of the equation, was truly genuine. So looking at it, and especially in particularly the last couple of weeks, it's very clear that even though Russia's tried to position us as having something to do with the Donbass, it is an attempt to essentially conquer large parts of Ukraine.
Michael Kaufman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.